I'm really passionate about this agricultural practice. This technique comes from Germany, and it's a spiritual agriculture. And it's very specific. It really is about healing the earth. But not just healing the earth, it really is a new agriculture for the future new earth. And the aspect of a new heaven and a new earth is human beings' responsibility. You have to transform yourself. That's a work in sanctifying and purification. It also extends to the earth. The biodynamic agriculture, bio means life, but it's earth life, like biology, something that comes into earthly existence. Dynamics is from the Greek word meaning dynamis, or movement. So it's the movement of life. In biodynamic agriculture, it's the movement of life forces for healing, and those forces come from the zodiac. So Zoe is also life, but it's eternal life. And the dia is circle. And dialogue, or dialogue, really means I'm having a dialogue or a circle conference with the Logos, because it is a cooperative effort between you and the spiritual world when you are practicing this type of agriculture. So the movement of zodiacal forces to spiritualize matter is a redemptive act for a new earth. And that's what I do. I spiritualize matter, and in the process, I'm spiritualizing myself, and vice versa. It works both ways. It's the practice of alchemy. So it's taking very specific preparations, and in the Hermetic tradition, it's making and putting substances together so that they come out in a transformative state. And then I take those preparations and we spray them on the land. I'm not spraying substance. I am spraying forces, and there is a huge difference. For those of you that are familiar with homeopathy, when you are taking a homeopathy medicine, there's nothing of the original substance in that homeopathic remedy. But the way that it is made, it has the elements of what is spirit in it. And then you put that under your tongue and you take that. And that's really how I raised my children. That's all they ever used was homeopathy. And I can tell you, I really love the medicine of homeopathy, and I just had already practiced that, and I thought, this is another way to do this now for the earth. Biodynamics transforms matter through alchemical preparations potentized. So that's my husband, Stanford. He's standing there, so he's not in good health now. This was about 4 years ago, and this is part of our backyard. And what he's making is vermiculture. We build soil. We don't grow plants. We make our own soil, because the soil here is very poor. It has not much life force in it. And so he dug out a path, and every time we dig out a path, he'll lay down organic matter. It's underneath here. Oh, I have a little pointer right there. It's a little bit of green. Then we cover it with cardboard, put mulch on top, and then that's our walking path. And in about 2 to 3 years, it breaks down. So our main path broke down, and so I shoveled the entire path out, and I had rich, black, life-filled, worm-filled soil, and then I put it in the different beds, and then we do it again. And we keep building soil. So this is a process of alchemy. Everything is changing. My garden is never the same. It's always different every year. And it's different according to how nature speaks to me, how the trees speak to me, what I need to do different, how I need to change it. And it's not that I go and plant a row, put a timer on it, and leave it. That's not really taking care of, for me, the Mother Earth. So I'm out there every day, walking the land every day, watching and seeing what is happening, what new plants have appeared that I didn't plant, why they are there. And I'm always having a dialogue in between, nature and myself. These forces that are formative are called etheric. And everyone has several bodies. Your astral body, which is like your soul and your chakras, and that's many layers. You also have an etheric body, which is the life body. And it's like your blueprint. So if I plant a seed in the ground, how is it that the Mother Nature knows that what seed I plant, a tomato seed, comes up as a tomato? How is that possible? Because the seed has an etheric body around it carrying the blueprint. You can't see it. I can't see it, but it's there and it exists. So this is unseen cosmic formative forces. So on the left is a Kaldni plate. In science, it's a metal plate that's hooked up to electricity and it vibrates. And so you have different vibrational sounds or tones that can be played with a violin bow or electronically transmitted. So sand is put on the Kaldni plate. And according to which sound is playing, the sound will vibrate and create a pattern that forms from the sound. But these sounds are constantly being sent out from the planets, the constellations, and the stars. These are actually forming your petals, your leaves, and everything, as well as the animals. And so these have a great deal of effect on us. So formative forces, just as EMF and 5G have unseen forces that form conditions of dis-ease in the body and affect nature, so do planets and stars have unseen formative forces that are life-giving, radiating into the earth. So if those frequencies have a negative effect, then we also have to have the balance of the opposite. There's the positive, which means we have to become more conscious and smarter as human beings to figure out how to counteract these negative forces. They're not going away. They're just going to get worse. So you have to figure out then, if that's a problem, we have to be the solution. This is a Kristic agriculture. There are 9 major preparations that are alchemically transformed. They all coincide with the 9 Beatitudes. There are master prep makers. They have taken this up as a life mission. They really understand this process, and so there's institutes around the United States as well as the world, and they dedicate their lives to doing this, and I've met a lot of these people. They are the cream of the crop for me of all humanity. They are the most spiritual people I have met. They really honor the earth as well as other human beings. And so it's been a real, for me, an honor to meet them, but I also want to make my own preparations too, because in your own geography, it's different etheric forces. We have different etheric here in San Pete County than we do up in Salt Lake. The life forces are different, and you can feel those. So this is yarrow from my garden. So the 2 foundational preparations, and these are actually creating a polarity in the plant. Must needs be opposition in all things. So this aspect of supporting the root and the soil is what 500 does, and that's what this preparation is called. And the reason it's called 500 is because the chemists that came from Germany back in the early 1900s to introduce Americans to biodynamic agriculture, Einfried Pfeiffer was his name, and he created the Pfeiffer Center in New York. He was a chemist and worked for Oakland, and he did their landfill compost there. He was so good at it that they fired him because he knew how to alchemically change things quickly using certain bacteria and organisms. But he called the cow horn prep, which I will be making this week because this is the time of year to make it. And it's just taking a cow's poop. And you think, how can we transform that into something that is so full of life? And he tested a teaspoon after this was done, and it's buried in the ground for 6 months. So these don't take, these aren't things that you can make that are quickly done. It takes a long time, some of them for a year. And he found that there were over 500,000 live bacteria and organisms, similar to what you do when you are taking probiotics and you're putting the good bacteria into your stomach. And so this is what we're doing, is we're putting the good bacteria on the Mother Earth. And so he called it 500. And then from there, all of the other preparations followed with the next number. So that's how they got their numbers. So I will put manure in here from a lactating female cow. And then I usually cover it with a canvas. In Australia, they'll bury up to 1,000 horns in the outback. The most I've ever buried out at the community garden was 60 horns. It's a lot, but they all got used because it only takes about 1/4 of a cup. And so when it's completed, this is buried at Michaelmas, and this is the kind of festival time of year when the Perseid meteors are very prevalent in the sky, and it's putting iron in the atmosphere. And that iron is being put on the earth to strengthen the plants, because iron has everything to do with your will forces, how strong your will is. And if you have iron poor blood, you don't feel like doing anything. You're tired. And so this is the time of year that happens. So we bury these. Actually, Michaelmas was on the 29th, yesterday, about this time. And then they are dug up at Easter. So very Christic agriculture. There's a lot of symbolism in it. It goes in the dark. You're taking that which is nobody really wants anything to do with cow manure. You're putting it in the horn, which has the spiral signature. It transforms from the light of the sun, which is strongest in the wintertime, especially over winter solstice. And then I dig them up, and I have really nice, soft, full of organisms, and even it's still growing, and it doesn't smell. And it takes about 1/4 of a cup to, when I stir this in water, I'm potentizing it, and then I spray it on the land. And actually, if you are a good biodynamic practitioner, you would do this twice a month. And you always do it on a descending moon in the evening, because you're working with the soil and with the roots. You have to do a very conscious thing of, you have to know what you're doing when you're working with biodynamics and why you are doing it, because you're transforming the land. The other horns, and you would use different horns, not the same, is the 501 silica. Silica is pure crystal. It's light that has been densified into matter. And you take the crystals and you break them apart and you powder them, and then you add rainwater, you put that into a horn, and that is buried at Easter time. So there's this opposition going on. When one is finished, the other one goes into the ground, into a different hole, and then that stays in the ground and is dug up at this time. What's so wonderful about this is after it's done, it's just a fine powder. You only need 1/4 teaspoon in 4.5 gallons. I have enough of this for the rest of my life. And I keep it in the window because it's liquid sunshine. And so this is sprayed on the leafing part of the petals, and it develops the seeds. So I'm spraying liquid sunlight. If my tomatoes aren't ripening right now, I can go spray, and they're not ripening. They are coming in at the community garden, but there's a lot that are not. So I'm going to go spray this for 3 days in a row, and they're gonna all be ripened. So you better be ready to pick. There are 6 compost preparations. When they are made, this is all you need, very tiny amount. And there are 6 plants that have a correlation connection with the 6 classical planets. So every planet moves, creates a pattern, and that pattern imprints itself on particular plants. So I'm making a compost of the macrocosm. It's a microcosm of the macrocosm. And the way that it's alchemically made is the aspect of combining the animal world with the plant world. And it's using animal sheaths. If you study embryology as a scientist, the formative forces that form particular parts of organs in the cow are the same formative forces that form particular plants. So those two are put together in an alchemical way, and then they're either buried or sometimes they're hung in the summer. It just depends, for 6 months to a year, and then they alchemically change. That's about the best way I can describe this hermetic alchemism. Compost is the most important thing you can do for the earth. I can't emphasize that enough. This picture up here, this is Peter Proctor. He's in his 80s. When he retired, he sold everything he had, and he's from New Zealand, and he went to India. If you know about the situation in India with Monsanto basically destroyed their land. And so he went and traveled around the whole area of India, teaching day after day after day how to rejuvenate and rebuild the land using biodynamics and compost. And he dedicated the rest of his life to doing that. Once a pile is made, then you have an iron bar and you are punching the holes into the compost. And then here on this, he's putting in the compost prep. And there's 5 of them that are put into the compost. And then the soil and covered up. And then at the top, after they finish, they spray the valerian, because valerian is the warmth. It brings in the warmth, formative forces, and it starts to break down. Plants need the inherited ancestral wisdom of previous generations of transformed plants by way of compost. Just as you as human beings have hereditary influences from your ancestors that make you who you are, it is the same way with the earth. That's how connected we are. So we need to keep the plants instead of taking them to the dump and making a compost pile and then transforming that and putting it back onto the earth. And each year your soil is strengthened more and more, and it becomes more enlivened and filled with more life forces. So this is my backyard. It looks like a jungle. And the beans. So the preparations that are going into the compost from 502 to 507 is yarrow. So I grow all of the preparations. You can get to the point where you don't have to use the preps. You can just start using the plants, but you have to have the consciousness and know what you're doing. And you have to know how yarrow works. It's called the light plant. It brings in light forces. This is one of the greatest healing plants there is. You can use all parts of it. You know, the leaves and the flowers. This is connected to Venus. This is the dance of Venus. This is the pattern that Venus makes in the heavens as it moves in conjunction with the sun. In the front, an inferior, and in the back, superior. And it's moving around. In 8 years' time, it makes this pattern in the heavens. And that pattern then has the formative forces that forms a lot of the plants that we call, oh, that's a Venus plant. And Venus, if you understand the quality of plants and planets, has the ability to also not just form nutritional value, but also insert the aspect of the quality of Venus. And the quality of Venus is the mother, it is nurturing, it is caring, it is light, and these are virtues. And it was well known in ancient days that your foods were directly connected to the virtues that you were developing in your character. And it wasn't McDonald's. So this is the dance of Venus, and it's one of the highest formative forces because 8 is a sacred number. It's the lemniscate. It's the signature of God. And also it is the signature of the rose, which the rose oil has the highest frequency. 503 is chamomile. Chamomile is actually, this is the pattern of Mercury. Looks like if you really look at it, it looks like a 3-leaf clover. So you can look at leaf patterns sometimes, and Mercury has the pattern of formative forces for the grapes. And chamomile is also connected with Mercury. If you're a farmer, if you have this information, you can take the preparation that's alchemical and you want to have a good hay crop. You spray this on your field. Because this is the fastest planet, you will get another cutting of hay because it will grow so fast. So these are qualities that if you know what these plants do, you can apply them in your garden if you want another crop. Oh. And there are farmers that do that. They know that, especially big wheat farmers in Canada that practice biodynamics. And we're talking about thousands of acres, and they spray. And so, but they spray in a little bit different manner than because they have so many acres. 504 is stinging nettle. You can't see my stinging nettle, but it's all under my trees, and I have a big patch. And people would think, why would you grow stinging nettle? It is one of the most amazing plants for putting nutrition into the soil. So I'm going to cut all my nettles down this week, and it will go in my compost. It draws iron from the air. It puts iron into things that have yellow leaves that need iron. It's the first thing that comes up in the spring. So nettle soup is the first thing I make in the spring, and it's the best. And so it gives you these forces, and of course it's connected with Mars, the planet of aggression, of strong will. It has its negative points, and it also has its positive points. And you're finding that this next generation coming up has very weak will forces. They cannot finish a project. They can't even start a project, some of them. I know from teaching at the college after 45 years of teaching, I could see a difference in a lot of the students that were coming through. They changed considerably And it was getting more difficult to teach because there were no more thinking for themselves. It was all more emotional, not heartfelt, but emotional driven, and the lack of will forces. 505 is oak bark. The oak is taken off of the tree, or you can use scrub oak. This is connected with the moon, because the moon is like rigidified, calcified, very hard. But if you can spray oak bark on your plants, it makes them strong, so the little pests can't even pierce the stem. Because you know that's what calcium does for your bones is what oak bark does for the plants. It's kind of the same principle. The same with horsetail or silica. And so all of these compost preps are in those little containers. And I didn't make those. A master prep made those. You can use scrub oak. Yes, you would use what is indigenous to your area. Rudolf Steiner, who is the one that developed this agricultural method back in the early 1900s, said everything could be replaced considerably in your area that would be comparable. The only thing that couldn't was stinging nettle. That was the highest plant for fire forces and connected with Mars and will. So 506 is dandelion. This is Jupiter. So Jupiter makes that pattern in 12 years because Jupiter stays in one constellation for a whole year and then moves and goes to the next one. Jupiter is the planet of wisdom, ruled by the cherubs, the spirits of wisdom and harmony. So it brings harmony and nitrogen forces. It harmonizes as well as intelligence and wisdom into the compost. So everybody sprays their dandelions with Roundup, and I'm going, you have no idea what a wonderful plant this is.
So do you take the whole plant?
No, just the flower. And then the bud in the middle has to be closed. If it's already opened, it's been pollinated and it goes into a puffball. So you don't really have anything left of the dandelion. And the last compost preparation is valerian. So here you can see all of the patterns. This is Saturn. This is the warmth. The aspect of Saturn is more upright than all of the other patterns. And if you have ever grown valerian, it's like the most upright plant in your garden. It likes to stand above all of the other flowers, and it grows really tall, and it won't let anything get higher than it. And you can watch it grow. It's like, no, I'm the king here. So, and you take the flowers and you press the oil out of it. So this is the warmth. Valerian is connected to Saturn. Saturn is very serious, very sober. If there's a freeze, you can spray valerian, but it has to be done day and night for 3 days in a row. Puts a blanket of warmth over your trees so you have fruit if there's a big freeze. So you just have to have the strong will forces to do that. Most people go look outside and it's snowing and it's cold and they're like, I'm not going out there to do that. So it takes a little bit of dedication, but if you want to save your fruit. So these are the 6 major compost preparations. These are the patterns. These are the formative forces that form the plants that you put in your compost. And what you're doing is you're giving a message when you put the compost on your garden and you're telling your plants, this is the etheric blueprint. Because what we're doing with chemtrails, 5G, all of the air pollution, the water pollution, the plants are becoming less and less sensitive to their blueprint. And so that's what the animals too. So you're going to see more and more animals born with 3 legs. Or a calf. I've seen this past year. That was born with half a mouth. Half a mouth. And so the tongue hung out. And so it couldn't suckle. It couldn't eat. Because the formative forces don't have a way to come on the earth and to do the blueprint as the archetype of the animal or the plant to make it whole, holistic, because of what we have done. Every single one of us, you carry a cell phone, you're guilty. You use 5G, you drive a car. So collectively, that has happened. And not only that, this aspect of the ring around the earth, which is very strong formative etheric forces, is trashed. There's so much space trash out there. And then it's all filled with satellites. That's deliberately done. So these forces don't come towards us as human beings. Our body needs those life forces as well as the earth. And so we have to be smarter. We have to do things with a higher consciousness. The last one is horsetail. So I wildcraft and I'll go get horsetail. So this is Equisetum arvense, contains the highest levels of silica in the plant kingdom. Silica is what makes your hair, it makes your fingernails, it gives substance and strength to your bones. So when you break a bone, you've got to use Equisetum, along with comfrey and oat straw, and it'll heal your bones. Silica strengthens and toughens plants, making them harder for pests to invade. So I spray silica, and I just make a tea and I ferment it. This is Equisetum, and I use that in my spray. So if I really want to give my plants strength, I can spray the 500, which is the cow horn, but the last 20 minutes that I'm stirring, I can add something else. So I will add sometimes the silica, okay? So everything that I'm doing is I'm bringing strength to the plants. But the plants don't respond. If you've never done biodynamics and you've done chemical farming, to convert from chemical to biodynamics takes about 3 years. So you've put chemicals on the land, it takes that long. It's like you are a vessel for the spirit, but the spirit doesn't come if you're watching porn. I wonder why. You have to create the environment for the spirit then to come. I have to create the environment in agriculture for the etheric forces to come. And that's through these alchemical preparations that are sprayed. And they should be sprayed as often as possible, even more so in our chaotic world. How do I potentize it? We stir it and we make a vortex. So on the left is, I just stirred yesterday. I sprayed a special spray that is called the harmonizer spray. It was made 7 weeks ago and fermented, and I just use a teaspoon. But you can't spray this on your land if you haven't already sprayed the other preparations. It's too much for the plants. So it's like taking a kindergartner and trying to teach them how babies are made. It's not the right time.
What do to the plant? Does it hurt anything, or it just doesn't do any good?
It doesn't hurt the plant,
Or the soil?
but it doesn't help the elementals. Every plant has an elemental behind it. Every tree has a spirit behind it. So you're working with real spirit. And so you have to get to know your plants. You have to get to know the trees. You have to get to know the spirit behind the matter. That's true spiritual work. This one on this side is called a flow form. And this is when you have lots of acres to spray. And there's a pump that flows the water, and it goes like this in a figure 8. It goes back and forth and back. It's vitalizing the water. So people who have thousands of acres will create a flow form, or they'll do it in a big 55-gallon bucket, and they have it mechanized. Actually, the flow form is a little bit better for the vitalizing of the water, and it's sprayed. And when you're doing the cow 500 or 501, standard, it's an hour. And it's because it's connected to your ego or your I consciousness, which usually only lasts an hour. You can only last an hour in a lecture. After that, you're zoned out. And at nighttime, you're even more so zoned out because you've worked hard all day. So, and then the last 20 minutes, sometimes I'll add something. And I was working with a Native American one time, and I had sprayed his garden. He asked me if I'd come and spray it. And I sprayed it several times. And then he said, "What did you do to my garden?" Because he was a good gardener, but that garden was really beautiful. He says, "I've never had such good tomatoes." And I said, I stirred and I sprayed Biodynamics. And he had seen me do it. He says, "Can I do that?" I said, "Yes. Would you like to come and stir?" And he said, "Okay." So he has his bucket and I have my bucket. And it's nice to stir with your hand because you can feel the water change after 20 minutes. The viscosity of the water changes. And you're going back and forth. You're creating a vortex, creating chaos, creating a vortex. And so after 10 minutes, "Are we done yet?" I said, "No, we have an hour." "We have to do this for an hour?" I said, "Meditate. Just still your mind." But actually, what you think goes into the water because your thoughts have vibrational frequencies. So usually this is sacramental to me on the land. And I don't really like to be with a lot of people when I'm doing this. And so I'll be meditating, and I have very specific prayers, meditations that I'll be saying in my mind, and I'm consciously putting them in the water. And people say, "You can meditate for a whole hour?" And I said, "Yeah, I can." It takes some practice, and my mind doesn't wander. I'm staying focused because I know what I'm doing. So you make a vortex, that's where the etheric comes in. So when you see hurricanes and tornadoes going through the land, there's that still point in the center where there's no wind, there's nothing, it's just still. They call it the 0 point. And what the spiritual world is doing is they're cleaning. They're sending etheric forces down into the earth, and they're cleaning because certain areas have really accumulated a lot of negative debris from thoughts, and they're cleaning that up. Living soil, it's easy, but it's not. Build living soil with organic waste. Save all your organic waste. Make worm paths. There was a picture of Stanford on the worm path. You can use the Pfeiffer field spray. If you can't make compost with all of the preparations, there is a bacteria, and it takes 12 hours to activate. And this is the Pfeiffer Biodynamic Field and Garden Spray. And you don't need very much, but you have to activate it. And it grows overnight for 12 hours, and then you can put it in your bucket and stir it and spray. But what's wonderful about this, it has all of the preparations in it, except the silica. And so when I teach classes, I always start out with this first before you make compost. And I make other things too. So build a compost pile and mulch, especially here in the desert, because we're getting all of our irrigation metered. So the more arability you have in the soil, the more mulch, the more light it is, because we have clay soil, the less water it takes. So biodynamics helps with that. The second part of biodynamics is using cosmic formative forces. And primarily we're using planetary moon and the sun forces. The sun is in Virgo now. But in case of the moon moves every 2.5 days and then is situated in front of a particular zodiacal constellation. And it acts in a way that the forces coming from behind the moon is able to actually strengthen that particular element for the plant. So if you're familiar with your plant, you have the root is the earth element. You have the stem and the leaf is the water element. The flower is the air because the scent of the flower goes through the air and you smell it. And then the seeds are the fire element. So when I'm working with plants, I have to be conscious of what part of the plant do I want to focus on. And then when the moon moves with these constellations, if I'm working with tomatoes, squashes, pumpkins, they are the seed plants. I am working with Aries, I am working with Leo, and I'm working with Sagittarius, because those are fire elements. And when I know the moon is before one of those three, that's when I plant my tomatoes, or that's when I seed or plant anything that has a seed. It is so important that you plant at the right time. Because people say, well, I planted broccoli and nothing came up. I planted lettuce and it all went to seed. Well, what day did you plant it on? Oh, when I had time. Well, maybe you planted it on a seed day, which you put the message into the plant to go to seed. So your lettuce went to seed. And lettuce is a leaf. So you would plant that on a leaf day. So it makes a difference when you plant, transplant, and harvest. If you make a living from doing this, it makes a world of difference. If you make your own essential oils, you can get 30% more essential oil if you know when to plant, when to harvest, and when to distill. And you can even spray a biodynamic preparation that will bring up the level of the oils in the plant. If you are a flower, you have a flower shop, and you cut your flowers on a day and then they just don't stay fresh very long, well, you cut them on the wrong day. There are flower days. They will last 2 weeks longer. So this is just little tiny bits of information that's really helpful when you're growing things, because in an economic way, it can save you money and it can make you money. So each of these constellations, there are 12, are divided into 4. So there are 3 constellations that are earth, 3 that are water, 3 that are air, and 3 that are fire. And you become familiar with those. We need to start looking up. We need to start really understanding the heavens. We need to understand this aspect of the planetary forces that are coming that have a great effect, not just on the planet, but on you as a human being. And Waldorf education understands this, and they use this in 7-year rhythms. They understand the rhythm of the child according to zodiacal forces. And they use that, and they're very effective in their teaching. The moon rhythms are also the phases and the ascending and descending. Everyone's more familiar with the phases of the full moon and the new moon. And if you're going to start germinating seeds 2 days before the full moon is the prime time to plant, because those forces from the moon are pulling all of the water. It controls the tides of the earth. And that water pulls up also into the seed, and your seeds will germinate quicker if you can plant them at the right time. Potatoes you would plant on a new moon, because the new moon is dark, and you're planting your potatoes into the dark, into the soil as a root. So if you know these things, you have a lot better success and a lot better harvest. And the same with when you harvest. If I buy Squashes at Beck's, I eat them first because they're not going to last through the wintertime. I don't know when they planted them. I don't know when they harvested them. But I still have squash from last year. Still in my basement, I have a storage room. I still have butternut because I planted it on the right day. I worked with it and weeded it on the right day, and I harvested it on the right day. And so it keeps for me. This is, for me, one of the most important, the ascending and the descending. This makes all the difference in your gardening, especially if you're transplanting hot weather crops here, which you have to do. Always transplant on a descending moon. When you're putting in new trees, always plant your trees on a descending moon. You will have much greater success because all of the forces are being pulled down into the earth, into the roots. You give the tree a message when the moon is ascending that it's supposed to be coming up, especially for the sap. Well, the sap isn't supposed to be coming up in the tree that's being rooted. The energy is supposed to all go down into the roots. And so you have a better success with your orchard if you know when to transplant these things. Cosmic calendar, so you don't have to figure it out for yourself. I have both. Maria Toon, I actually like hers better, but she does it 2 weeks and it's color coded. So you just look at the day, what color it is. Oh, it's a green day. That's roots. I can work with the roots. I can plant roots. I can harvest roots. I can weed. And I can tell you from experience, if you weed all your root crops, just your root crops, on a root day, the next day you go outside and it's like your roots are so happy. Your carrots, it's like they've grown 2 or 3 inches and you think, oh my gosh, look at this. They look so good. Because you've honored the formative forces coming in at that particular time. And I like this calendar because there's all of these little suggestions that go above and beyond what you think that you can do. And you can keep notes here for Maria Toon. And she's a German scientist, and her grandchildren have taken over the work because she passed away. The other one is the Cosmic Celestial Planting Calendar. Most people like this one because it's a month, and you can see the colors. There's the days. You don't have to worry about the planetary alignments, what's going on over there. You just have to look at the day. It's a blue day. It's a water day. I can plant lettuce. Can you harvest it? Well, if you're going to eat it, you can harvest it at any time. Okay? You're not storing it. You're going to eat it. And then there's gray areas. Gray areas are called blackout days. You don't work with the plants. It's unfavorable. In fact, the next time there's a lunar eclipse or any kind of eclipse, anywhere in the world, it doesn't matter, sow some seeds and see what happens. It's really fun. It's a great school experiment. You'll find all kinds of weird things happening because those forces aren't allowed to come onto the earth. So,
Kristi, question. So how does, like, because I planted with a calendar, but it wasn't this, but it was when the weather was just right in our community. So how does that correlate with what you're telling us?
well, it depends on when the frost date is, or if you're waiting for the winter time. This goes month by month, so you have to figure out when is your last frost date, and then you could use the calendar, but you could use it also as a journal and look for the next couple of weeks and say, wow, this is the most important day of transplanting my tomatoes out into the garden. I know the weather is good. It's on Leo. That's a prime day. And you have the best tomatoes. But you have to make some sacrifices. I'm not going to go out and plant if it's raining hard or if it's snowing or whatever. I mean, I'm just looking at the weather. And we have a short growing season here too, so it makes a difference. Terrell?
I understand the phases of the moon, but ascending and descending, how is the, well, we actually saw that the moon was way, way low, almost,
Yeah. So the moon actually, if you watch the moon at night, watch it go up. If it's ascending, it'll be higher in the sky each night for 14 days.
okay.
It takes about 14 days, and then it will reach its zenith, and then it will start to descend.
Oh, really? So we were at the bottom when we were like the last couple of days, and the moon barely.
You can barely see it, yeah. Yeah, so it's actually ascending right now, but.
It's ascending now, but because it's been going down, 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 now it's going to be coming
Right.
up.
And it has a pull on the tides and on the water and the forces, and so it makes a difference in what you're planting and doing in your garden. So, cosmic nutrition. These are planetary forces and zodiacal forces. This is all my harvest. So, it makes a difference in the nutritional value of your food. And the reason it does is because the science of life forces, Rudolf Steiner said this in 1924, in the future, food will not contain the necessary nutrients to sustain the spirit. How many spiritual experiences are you having? How many times can you part the veil? How many times do you have communion with angels? You should be doing it every day. That's what your life should be spiritually in this age, which is the consciousness soul age. There will no longer be a bridge between the cosmic forces needed for food and will forces. Rudolf Steiner saw this back in 1924. He had the foresight to see what was going to happen in the future. He didn't know anything about 5G or chemtrails or all of the things that we are faced with in our life. So these are people that I have a connection with, that I know, that are earth healers, and earth healing as a redemptive act. These are people changing the earth. This is Sarah and Cimbria Patterson at Red Acre Farms. They're in Cedar City. And this is her little store that her father built for her when she was 15. Sarah started gardening when she was 14. That's what she wanted to do. And now she's a biodynamic gardener. She and her mother support themselves completely with biodynamics. They have a CSA, Community Supported Agriculture, where they grow. And they have 100 members. And people pay for biodynamic food because they know what they're getting. And they do events, and they have gone through hell to get to where they are, because spiritual practices are not very well liked by the dark. And but now they have an educational center. You ought to thank these two women. They go up to Salt Lake every January and February, and they live in Salt Lake. And they are on the hill in the Capitol. They read every food bill that goes through legislation. These two women. They see what they're trying to do for the food, and they stand up and they lobby against it. So they're the ones that allow the farmers markets to continue here, for you to have raw milk, for you to buy your fresh eggs. And Sarah and Cimbria Patterson. Cimbria is the mother, and Sarah's, I think she just turned 30. So, and she's a national speaker. She travels all over the United States. And they do the Utah Farm Conference in January in Cedar City. And they've brought Joe Salatin there and other big names. So they're serious about what they do. Sunny Side Up Pastures. This is in Clearfield. He sells grass-fed beef. This is Stanford, and that's Kristi. They have the same names as, go figure, as my husband and I. And they came and met us before he started doing the ranching because he wanted to see what we did. He said, should I do biodynamics? He was taking over his grandfather's 500-acre hay farm. And he said, and he was graduated from BYU as an engineer, and he said, I don't want to do that. I want to take over this farm, but I don't want to do chemical farming. And I said, you don't want to do biodynamics either. If you're just learning, you've got to build the soil first. So I said, you need to study Joel Salatin. So he went back to Virginia and stayed with Joel Salatin, studied under him, and came back. And so you cannot believe the soil that is out there that he has changed in 5 years' time. And now he's starting to practice biodynamics because he's ready to.
And where is this at?
Centerfield, outside of Gunnison. So if you go to their website, Sunnyside Up Pastures, they sell grass-fed beef. And the girls have a chicken mobile, like Joel Salatin, and they sell the eggs. And they do really well doing that. And when they left, I met them when they only had 2 children, the girl and the boy, and he was a baby. So that's how long ago. I said to Kristi, I said, well, we might have the same name, but I bet we don't have the same middle name. And darned if we didn't. Doesn't God work in really wonderful?
What is it?
And Miss Lynn.
Lynn?
Lynn. Mm-hmm. Here's the Master Prep Maker School, the Josephine Porter Institute, exploring the practical implications and spiritual basis of biodynamic regenerative agriculture.
Is that in Colorado?
No, this is in Virginia, JPI. And this book is really good on biodynamic gardening. It's by Monty Walden. But what I really like about it is every page in this book is full of pictures and step-by-step. And even if you didn't want to do biodynamics, the last part of the book has the division of the root and the leaf, the flower and the seed. And it has a page on every kind of root, how to plant, when to harvest. It's just a really good overall book just for gardening. But then it has other preparations in here as well. So this is really one of the best books. So this is Stuart Lundy. He's the scientist at JPI. I took a 2-year class with him. He is brilliant. He is one of the most amazing alchemical hermeticists I have ever met for a young man, and he is so dedicated. And the one on the right is Lloyd Nelson, and this is his products here. And he makes the 500 with buffalo manure because he's really, he believes that going back to the ancestral, indigenous, Native American is very helpful in strengthening the land. So this is made out of buffalo manure and put in a buffalo cow horn. And so these two are just the master, and it's so wonderful to see young people doing this because I'm not getting younger, and you want to leave that as a legacy, but these two are really dynamite in the biodynamic world. The Fellowship of Prep Makers, there's one in Oregon, that's Wally Villa, and I've met him, and he's incredible. And then there's the Western Colorado Biodynamic Community. This is in Paonia. So they also come together as a community to make compost and make all the preparations. And they're a wonderful group of people there in Paonia. This is Paonia, Colorado. Almost all of the farms, vineyards, orchards are biodynamic there. Enzo Nastati, who is a really not well-known scientist here, but in Italy, does homeodynamics. He goes even beyond biodynamics. They purchased a farm. This is the Lucas farm. They created the symbol of the lemniscape as a 4-leaf clover. He's teaching them how to use sacred geometry as well as homeodynamics in healing the earth. And they are creating the first spiritual agricultural university there in the world. He said, I couldn't do it in Italy. Someone who has that kind of knowledge isn't honored in their own home. He said, I found a group of people in Colorado that came together to do this. And I have worked with them. And it's pretty amazing what he has done. Unbelievable, some of the things he's done. And so he's hired by people from all over the world to do different things. And he is so far beyond and advanced in consciousness. I just wanted to read something because he was called to a farm to see what was the problem that was going on. And he said, let's see. I took this out of his book. So he says, when you have a pests or bugs coming, it's a spiritual problem. Everything agricultural is a spiritual problem. So they had a black pest come that was destroying. They didn't want to kill it. So they came together for 3 days and they meditated to find the name. What is the name of the pest? And the name doesn't mean what you call the pest. The name is, why is the pest there? Understanding. Why did you call it in? And once they realized how it came and why it was there, then they could address the problem. And the next morning after the 3 days, it went away. The pests went away. He said this is called a moral technique. Okay? And then he was called by 2 brothers that had a farm, but they didn't work the farm. One was a lawyer, one was a doctor. And he went to the farm and he saw that the woman that worked the farm, she was like taking care of it, was the caretaker. And she invited them in for tea. And she ruled the farm, so he is talking to her because even though she's not the steward, she's taking care of the farm. And he could tell that the zodiacal formative force of Jupiter was missing on the farm. Jupiter is related to the liver. So he asked the woman, how's your liver doing? And she said, it's failing. So he used homeodynamics to heal the liver, and then the farm was healed. The problem is not the farm. The problem is not the garden. It's not the pests. Enzo says it's always a spiritual matter. And I know that to be true because we were having trouble one year with our trees. And there were a couple that weren't doing well. And we were trying to figure out what was wrong. And then all of a sudden, after I had talked with Enzo, I knew. It wasn't the trees at all. It was my husband. We were having some disharmony. And that was causing the disharmony in the garden. And once we realized that, we made an effort to bring harmony back. And it did. So this aspect of internal, outwardly, internally, is truly connected. Because if you want to be a loving, light-filled, transfigured person, you can't kill. You can't even have the thought of killing. That includes any living thing that has life. Bugs, pests, even mosquitoes. Mosquitoes come because you have so many thoughts that are buzzing around in your head that you can't keep calm. I've been with people who've been bitten. Have you been in a forest or somewhere walking and everybody comes out and you don't have a mosquito bite, but maybe a person has got bit all over? Why did the mosquitoes leave you alone? And why did they eat that other person alive? It's all about what you radiate out as a force. And so this aspect of becoming human beings that are transformed as well as the earth goes hand in hand.